Scarlett Johansson is joining The Batman Part 2. Yeah, you heard that right. It kind of seems a little too big, a little too grand to be true. Like someone of that status and prestige that's going to be in The Batman Part 2. But here's the thing about her joining The Batman Part 2. I love it. It's perfect. This is Matt Reeves and Mattson Tomlin making an incredibly specific character choice that perfectly aligns with where the Batman story needs to go. The news broke through Nexus Point News, and then we got Variety and Deadline that made it official. Johansson is in final negotiations for a major role opposite Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne. Specifics haven't been revealed yet, but the rumblings are kind of unanimous. She's playing some sort of villain, possibly one with romantic ties to Bruce. And apparently, since Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman won't be returning, this makes a lot of sense. And yeah, that sucks, but also it tracks when you consider where Selina Kyle was headed at the end of the first film. Industry insider Jeff Snyder followed up with another detail.
What I'd heard is that I think ScarJo's taking less money up front, and she's getting points on the back end. Also, so it was all about like balancing The Exorcist, right? Mm-hmm. She was in talks for Exorcist, and I'm told she really likes Mike Flanagan's take on that. Yeah. And everyone assumed that Emma Stone was going to end up doing Batman. So when she passed, Scarlett was like, "Oh shit, that role's available?
Wow.
Go get it for me. Go chase this and pursue it aggressively and do whatever it takes." Like, it took a while to figure out the Exorcist schedule because they're shooting, there is some overlap there. Right. Jesus! Oh my God! Fuck!
Think about that for a second. Scarlett Johansson, one of the most highest grossing actresses in Hollywood history, who is like a big name in and of herself, chasing a specific part in a Batman sequel hard enough that, according to Jeff, she potentially took a lower upfront salary in exchange for back-end points. Something, Robert Downey Jr. has had a lot of success doing. That's someone who read the script and said, yeah, sign me the fuck up, which is beyond encouraging. Now, the immediate fan assumption was, oh, she's gonna play Poison Ivy. However, if you've been following the development of the script, Reeves and Tomlin have hinted that they're going for someone who hasn't been used in the live-action Batman films before. Someone with a connection to Bruce's past. I don't know, man. Sounds a lot like Andrea Beaumont to me, aka the Phantasm. And here's why I think it could be a brilliant idea. But before we get started, you don't need to get your heart broken to become the world's greatest detective. All you need is today's sponsor, Brilliant. You've heard me talk about Brilliant on the channel before, and for good reason. They're my favorite platform for learning new skills that are tailored to the way you retain information. Brilliant helps you become a better thinker and problem solver through interactive lessons in math, science, programming, data analysis, you name it, building your understanding of concepts from the ground up. Crafted by an award-winning team of teachers, researchers, and professionals from Stanford, MIT, Caltech, Google, and more, Brilliant's lessons are designed to develop your critical thinking skills through problem solving, not rote memorization. Each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that lets you play with concepts such as electric and digital circuits and gear systems, physical structures, and more. So what are you waiting for? Give learning a try. Give that big brain a workout by going to brilliant.org/filmspeak, scan the QR code on screen, or click the link in the description below. Brilliant's also giving our viewers 20% off an annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant, which is, pretty sweet, if I do say so. That's brilliant.org/filmspeak, scan the QR code on screen, or click the link in the description, get that sweet 20% off an annual premium subscription, and thank you so much to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. Let's go back to when Matt Reeves was doing press around the Emmys. He revealed that The Batman Part 2 will focus more on Bruce Wayne as a person because the first film was so focused on Batman.
One of the explorations for me was to do something that pushes even further into the character of Bruce Wayne, because the first story is so much about the Batman. Once you get past the origin tale, then you start telling the Rogues Gallery story and that character's sort of arc. And I never wanted to lose Rob at the center of these stories, and so that is really what we set our aim on. Picking the right villain that digs into what that does, that sort of goes into his past and his life. That was what drove that sort of discussion. And I will say, it's never really been done in a movie before, so we're excited.
Now, back when he initially said that, people immediately jumped to Hush or Court of Owls. Both solid guesses given the criteria, and honestly, two rogues I also considered. Still hoping if there's a third film, it'll involve the Court of Owls, because that is just untapped potential that I think would work beautifully in the Batman universe. But neither of these antagonists offered the emotional complexity that I think Reeves clearly wants to explore. Hush is a childhood friend turned twisted reflection of Batman. The Court is a shadowy organization with a historical ties to Gotham, and yeah, it'd be a cool way to maybe unpack the corruption his parents were a part of, given what we know of them from the first film. Both connect to Bruce's past, sure, but neither one fundamentally challenges who Bruce Wayne is as a person the way Andrea Beaumont does. Think about what Andrea represents. She's not just someone from Bruce's past, she's the woman who could have stopped Bruce from ever becoming Batman, the one who made him question the plan. And when she returns years later, she's become exactly what Bruce was in danger of becoming, a vigilante consumed by vengeance, hunting down the people who destroyed her life, except she's willing to cross the line the way he never would. It's a mirror, a dark reflection, and it fits Reeves' vision for the Batman universe perfectly. Here's why Andrea makes so much sense for where this story is headed. At the end of The Batman, Bruce has a realization. He's been operating as vengeance, a specter of violence that punishes criminals but doesn't actually save anyone, isn't actually doing a whole lot of good with the power he has. The flood changes him. He understands that Gotham needs someone they can look up to, someone who will save them and put restoration first, instead of just, being a vigilante beating down on criminals to satisfy deep-seated trauma that's gone unaddressed. Bruce learns to become a hero. But that's only half the equation. The Batman showed us a Bruce Wayne who's essentially disappeared. He doesn't really exist in the public eye. He's retreated entirely into the mask. Bruce isn't attending fundraisers or using his company to enact some good for the city or just overall engaging with Gotham in a way that will prevent what happened to him from happening to anyone else. Batman is the real Bruce. Bruce Wayne is the mask. If The Batman was a story about how Bruce Wayne lost himself to the mask, The Batman 2 seems to be positioning itself as a story about the need for Bruce Wayne to embrace his alter ego. Not abandon Batman, but understand that both halves work in tandem. While Batman is doing good for the city in the shadows, Bruce needs to leverage his wealth and status to enact legislative change, to back programs that will actually help Gotham's inhabitants, be a public figure people can believe in. But aside from that, this is where someone like Andrea comes in. She could be the draw that pulls Bruce Wayne, the man, out of his castle. Someone from a past life before he became what he is now. Someone who knew the Bruce who could smile, who could imagine a future that didn't involve prowling rooftops. She represents a road not taken, a version of life where he might have been happy instead of tortured. Well, I mean, at least a little bit more happy than what he is now. This becomes even more complicated when it's revealed that Andrea isn't just a face from Bruce's past. She's the Phantasm, this new foe that emerges that Batman has to try and hunt down. She's the very thing Bruce has been fighting against. Someone on a mission to hunt down and kill the mob, or whoever it's going to be in this version, for what they did to her father, to her family. Someone consumed by the same vengeance that nearly destroyed Bruce in the first film, except she's fully committed to it. The tragedy writes itself. She's a product of Gotham's brutality, just like him, except she hasn't learned the lesson he learned in that flood. Andrea is so perfect for Reeves' vision because she challenges both halves of Bruce Wayne in ways no other villain really can. As Batman, Bruce could be trying to stop Phantasm's killing spree, but he can't simply view her as another criminal to be taken down. He understands her. He was her. When you lose someone to violence and the system fails you, when the institutions meant to protect people instead protect the powerful, the temptation to become judge, jury, and executioner is overwhelming. Bruce felt it. He nearly succumbed to it. It could help him understand that the means of getting through to her isn't through Batman, but rather through being Bruce Wayne. It would allow him to have greater empathy for his adversaries, force him to start acting more heroically. It would teach him that some battles can't be solved with a physical altercation. I think the reemergence of Andrea would actually force Bruce to consider the limitations of Batman and the utility of Bruce Wayne. As Bruce Wayne, the connection is even more personal. This is someone he loved, someone who knew him before the cowl. Their history makes her vendetta feel like a personal failure. If he'd been there for her, if he'd found her sooner, if things had been different, would she have become this? The guilt would be immense. And here's the thing, Bruce can speak to her from experience. He can tell her that he was on the same path, that being vengeance almost consumed him, that there's a better way to honor the people you've lost than by becoming a monster in their name. He's learning to be Bruce Wayne again, to be human and channeling his frustrations with the system in a productive way, using his wealth and influence and platform to make actual change. People need public figures they can believe in, people they understand. Bruce doesn't have to be Harvey Dent or Bella Real, but he can do more. The tragedy could be that she's too far gone, that despite everything Bruce tries, Andrea is committed to her mission, and Bruce is forced to endure heartbreak again. Another person he couldn't save, another relationship destroyed by Gotham's endless cycle of violence. The lesson would still be learned. He would learn that, yeah, Bruce Wayne is necessary at times, but the melancholy of the character remains. Or, maybe there's a way for her to get through to him, too. Maybe she makes him question whether his methods are really all that different from what she's doing. Maybe she forces him to confront whether Batman is actually helping or just making himself feel better. Real growth requires challenge from someone who matters, and I don't think there's any other character better equipped to do that for Bruce than Andrea Beaumont. The possibility of Andrea makes things even more interesting when you consider the possibility of Robin entering the picture. Well, nowhere near confirmed. I mean, none of this is really confirmed. It's just speculation time over here. But a lot of fans are hoping, clamoring for Robin in the Batman 2. I mean, hell, I made a video on this. You can go check it out over there. And if you think about the narrative structure Reeves might be building, having both the Phantasm and Robin in the same film creates a perfect thematic framework. On one side, you have Andrea, the Phantasm, someone who represents what Bruce was doing before his realization at the end of the Batman. Vengeance unchecked, justice through violence, a vigilante who's lost sight of saving people in favor of punishing those who wronged them. On the other side, you have Robin, probably a Dick Grayson if I had to guess, someone Bruce would be trying to help be better than who he was, a young person touched by tragedy who Bruce can guide away from the darkness that consumed him, a chance to break the cycle instead of perpetuating it. Both are challenging Bruce's identity from opposite directions. Andrea questions whether he's truly changed or whether Batman is just better at hiding what he really is. Robin forces him to articulate what he believes, to actually teach someone else how to do this without losing themselves. You have the allure, the pull to go back to the person that he was before the flood, and then you have hope. Someone pure, someone who's undergone tragedy but doesn't have to suffer the way that Bruce did through a Dick Grayson Robin or whatever. And I think having him caught in the middle there, having to figure out the path forward with all of these factors is just a brilliant way to tackle the sequel to The Batman. This also tracks perfectly with where the Penguin series left Gotham. The underworld has been completely upended. Sophia Falcone's power play destroyed the existing criminal structure along with Oz, who is now ascended into being the Penguin proper as we know him. The old guard is dead. In that chaos, someone like Andrea would thrive. The mob bosses she's hunting are vulnerable, their organization's fractured. It's the perfect environment for a figure like the Phantasm to operate, picking off targets one by one while Batman is blamed for the violence. That mistaken identity element is core to the original Mask of the Phantasm story, and it would work beautifully here. Plus, the escalation tracks. Andrea's not trying to become a crime boss, she just wants everyone who hurt her dead. It's also interesting because then it gets the public more involved with the idea of Batman. Are they accepting of him? Are they fearful of him? If you have someone who resembles Batman going around and killing people, you start to question whether or not Batman really is the hero he's purporting he is. And so because of that, you have a Bruce Wayne who maybe is forced to do a bit more as Bruce Wayne than he is Batman. It causes him to reflect on his own methods because, while he came to the realization that he needs to be this beacon of light, this symbol of hope at the end of the Batman, it's not as easy as just making a switch, right? Like there's going to be some ups and downs, there's going to be some regression, there's going to be some conflict there with the character. It's not just going to immediately be like, whoop, here we go, I'm the shining hero. Like, no, this is a guy with a lot of baggage, a lot of issues. And if this is the direction they go in, this poses a lot of rich, dramatic material where you can play with the character. The idea of the Phantasm is also just very Matt Reeves and how it balances the seemingly mystical with the grounded. The Phantasm's whole deal in the animated film is this eerie, almost supernatural presence. The smoke, the mask, the voice modulator that makes them sound like the Grim Reaper. But underneath all that, it's just a person with some clever technology and a hell of a lot of pain. Reeves loves that dynamic. The Batman wasn't afraid to lean into horror imagery. The Riddler as a Zodiac-esque serial killer. Batman emerging from the shadows as this force, this monster. His first scene still gives me chills, man, when he walks out and just beats the shit out of those Jokers. God damn. But within all of that, everything stayed grounded. There were no actual superpowers, no magic. It was just people pushed to extremes by a broken city. The Phantasm fits that perfectly. You could stage her appearances like a horror movie villain. The smoke, the blade, the distorted voice, victims convinced that they're being hunted by something inhuman. But when the mask comes off, it's just Andrea, someone Bruce knew, someone he loved. The reveal would be devastating in a way that I don't know you'd get with a Hush or a Court of Owls as much. Now, here's something else worth considering. Emma Stone looks exactly like the kind of actress Reeves and company would want for Andrea Beaumont. I mean, there's just look at them. But aside from that, I think the idea that both Johansson and Stone are Oscar caliber actresses who really don't need superhero movies on their resume anymore, I mean, that tells you a lot about this project and the impact that Matt Reeves has had on the genre and the vision that he has and why actors like this might be interested. Because remember, for Emma Stone, like, it's not like she didn't want to do the film, at least according to the reports. It was that she wanted more money. But in a weird way, I actually like the casting of Scarlett Johansson more than the possibility of Emma Stone playing the character. Because yes, while it's easier to imagine Robert Pattinson and Emma Stone in a relationship and her being an old flame to them, I actually think Johansson not being that is part of why I like her casting a bit more. She's no stranger to playing duplicitous characters. The charisma and versatility she brings to her roles, the ability to be sympathetic yet withholding in the same scene, would be fully utilized here. She can play the glamorous socialite reconnecting with Bruce Wayne. She can play the grieving daughter consumed by righteous fury. She can play the moment when Bruce realizes the woman he's falling for is the killer. She's great at all that. We know she's an incredible actress. But as opposed to an Emma Stone, I think Johansson brings a different kind of energy. There's a maturity to her presence, even though her and Pattinson really aren't that far apart in age. An aura that would contrast interestingly with Pattinson's emo Bruce. You might not immediately picture them as a couple, and that actually works for the story. Andrea is supposed to be a ghost from a past life, someone Bruce would have gone for before he became what he is now, someone who doesn't quite fit the mold of his current existence. That disconnect sells the tragedy, the idea that maybe he could be happier if he reverts back into the past or something. Like, there's just the possibilities for this are endless, and I think a lot of it can be seen very visibly through the contrast in both of these actors. Now, I know a lot of you are probably gonna be like, oh, Mask of the Phantasm. No, I don't want to see another version of that. The original animated film is perfect. Why would you just do a Disney live-action remake but with Batman? I don't think Matt Reeves is going to just directly translate Mask of the Phantasm, right? And you know, going off of that logic, well, then we shouldn't really ever adapt The Dark Knight Returns or The Long Halloween. Why should we ever adapt the greatest Batman stories ever told and ever touch them? I get it comes with a lot of baggage, but there's a reason why it's one of the best Batman stories, and perhaps it's worth taking a page out of James Gunn's playbook, for instance, and pulling from animated inspirations, the animated catalog, alongside the comics, especially for Batman the Animated Series. That's become almost as iconic as some of the Batman comics. I mean, Harley Quinn originated there, and now she's huge, right? Like, you can't imagine a Batman universe without her. Andrea Beaumont is a phenomenal character, but she's only ever been prominently featured in one thing, the Mask of the Phantasm movie. Yeah, there are a few comic appearances here and there, most notably in Tom King's Batman Catwoman series, but really, that's it. One of the best Batman villains, hell, characters ever created, and she's essentially been locked in the animated continuity for 30 years. The fact that Reeves and Tomlin might be bringing her to live action isn't just exciting, it's overdue. Long overdue. And like with all reinterpretations of iconic characters, you can tell a different version of this story in a fresh way, in a new medium. The core elements are flexible enough to adapt to Reeves's grounded, noir-influenced take on Gotham. I mean, in fact, I'd argue that's an incredibly noir story. It belongs in the Reeves verse. It should be there. Matt Tomlin, the co-writer on these films, being a known fan of Mask of the Phantasm, adds another layer of confidence here. Deciding to touch Phantasm, being someone who loves that story, is clearly something that's being done out of love, out of an understanding of the dramatic potential the character's inclusion could offer. It would be someone who loves this character getting the chance to bring her to a new audience while staying true to what made her compelling in the first place. If the whole film is about Bruce trying to fix his father's mistakes and be the upstanding citizen his father couldn't be, Andrea becomes even more central. Maybe he considers whether someone like the Phantasm could be useful, an instrument to ensure things get fixed without Batman getting his hands dirty. And then the question becomes, how is that different from what his father did? Thomas Wayne made a deal with Falcone. He thought he could use criminals to achieve good ends. He compromised his principles, and it got him killed. If Bruce went down the route of letting the Phantasm do the dirty work, he'd be no better than his father. I mean, really, there is something to be challenged here about the fact that Bruce is using both halves of himself, Batman and Bruce Wayne, to do work, to take justice into his own hands when perhaps his work as Bruce Wayne fails. And so I think there's an interesting philosophical dilemma here that the Phantasm could bring out. The delineation point has to be that for Batman, he's not attacking political or ideological opponents, and he's not killing anyone. That's what separates Batman from the Phantasm. That's what separates what Bruce is trying to do from what his father failed to do. Andrea forces that confrontation. She makes Bruce articulate where his line is, and maybe she calls him on his bullshit a little. Maybe she points out that this whole crusade is still violence, still operating outside the system instead of trying to change it. The only difference is that he stops short of killing. Is that enough to call yourself a hero? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just spitballing possibilities at this point. I just think it's interesting. So while we were editing this video, surprise, more news dropped. Now granted, none of this is confirmed. It's still very much couched in the rumor space, but it's also coming from Jeff Snyder, and so it just felt right to acknowledge it here in the event that, hey, this is actually what's gonna happen. Basically, according to Jeff, Scarlett Johansson will actually be playing Harvey Dent's wife, Gilda Dent. And I know that was one of the roles that she was kind of speculated to be playing when she was originally announced, but it also just feels like a bit too small of a role for someone like Scarlett Johansson to take on, especially with how integral the role seems to be to the core of the film. Jeff also teased that they're looking to cast Harvey Dent and his father, which makes a lot of sense because I think we all assumed that Harvey Dent needs to somehow come into the fold in these movies. Now, if this is true, I don't think it entirely negates the whole Phantasm angle that we're talking about throughout the course of this video. I think that Phantasm could actually very well be in the story. We know that Matt Reeves really likes The Long Halloween, and I mean, you know, I guess every filmmaker really likes The Long Halloween because that seems to be the core text that a lot of Batman adaptations lately, at least in the 21st century, have been pulling from. However, the one thing that hasn't been adapted from that arc is the Gilda Dent stuff, the Halloween killer. And if that is in fact who Scarlett Johansson is playing, I think there's a way to merge that with the whole Phantasm thing. So instead of Gilda playing the Halloween killer from The Long Halloween, she could be playing Phantasm, and it could be some kind of remixed version of Mask of the Phantasm. You could still keep the same beats, but also work it into what they're doing with The Long Halloween, which makes a lot of sense. I would trust Matt Tomlin and Matt Reeves to know that, like, hey, we can put our own spin on it. This character, this antagonist, the idea of it still works even if you kind of remix it a bit. And so I think we all knew that they weren't going to do a one-to-one adaptation. You know, they're keeping the same core ideas of the character, and they're kind of fusing it with everything that goes on with Gilda that we see in The Long Halloween. And so I think that could be a really cool way of bringing these two ideas together in a way that gives an actor like Scarlett Johansson a lot of material to play with. It could also be a case where, like, maybe Bruce and Gilda have some history. That way it makes the dynamic between Bruce and Harvey Dent a little bit more interesting. You know, she goes away and then she comes back and she's with Harvey Dent, and there's that whole dynamic in the mix, and I don't know, it makes for a nice love triangle. And also the idea of duality, right? Like, Two-Face is the embodiment of duality in Batman. Batman is also dealing with that, and then Gilda being the Phantasm, and, you know, this idea of her using a mask in order to enact her own form of justice for some wrongdoings in her past. Like, you can see how it could work with all three of them at the center of this thing. And then instead of using like a Joker or a whatever like they did in The Dark Knight, instead of using a more well-known antagonist, you use Phantasm and Gilda and this idea of duality to really explore these things. I don't know. I think that while this announcement does maybe allude to the fact that Scarlett Johansson won't be playing Andrea Beaumont, quote unquote, I think she will be playing Andrea in spirit, right? If it's Gilda or someone else, it's like the core essence of Andrea Beaumont in Phantasm as a character. I don't think this entirely negates that. So I don't know. It's still a fun little exercise in just like a potential version of Andrea or Phantasm. And yeah, I don't know. It's also just one of those things where it's like, well, we made the video and I want this to happen, so I'm still gonna do the video. And yeah, nothing that was announced here is confirmed, nor does it mean that Phantasm won't be in the film. So anyways, Matt Reeves said that he envisions The Batman as a potential trilogy. 3 films exploring Bruce Wayne's evolution from vengeance-fueled vigilante to hero. The Batman was about recognizing the problem. The Batman Part 2 seems to be about the struggle to change, to be something better while facing a mirror image of who Bruce used to be that forces him to recognize the utility in Bruce Wayne. Andrea Beaumont as the Phantasm creates the perfect antagonist for that story. We're not dealing with a Joker who wants to wreak chaos on Gotham, not a mastermind with an elaborate scheme, just a woman in pain, doing what she thinks is right, becoming exactly what Bruce was in danger of becoming. The best Batman villains reflect something about Batman himself. The Joker being the chaos to Batman's order, Two-Face being this idea of duality and the toxic forms of it. The Phantasm represents what happens when Bruce lets vengeance win. That feels like the story Reeves wants to tell. That's what Johansson apparently saw in the script and fought for. That's why this casting feels so right. The possibility of having this character come to life in live action feels so right.